7 times.
Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Okay, so 2 big ideas. We're going to go through, I'll just repeat it for the recording. We'll go through user interface and exporting data and what to use, how to use exported data. So if you're going to use Google Search Console effectively, those are basically the 2 big skill sets you need to have, right? You need to be able to quickly understand where to find things in the user interface and, you know, what to do with the data that you find. So some of this today, if you have done SEO at all, will feel familiar, but I think there is value in taking 15 straight minutes and together looking at every component of the user interface. So I would guess all of you have used Google Search Console many times. When you use it, you go to it for a specific purpose, right? You're finding some data point that you need to pull out. You're trying to see a trend. You're trying to observe something that happened that month, or you're just trying to collect data for a report or something like that. And so I think even as I was preparing for this, just remembering like there's just inherent value sometimes in taking a beat to spend like focused attention looking at all of the components of the way this tool works. And then we'll move into some application exercises. So that's kind of what we're going to cover. So I did put together a little session plan that we're going to kind of launch. So I'm going to dive right into this kind of first 15-minute section, and then we're going to do a little scavenger hunt together to kind of apply. So I just want to make sure we can very quickly like apply what we learn so that it sticks a little better. Does anybody have any questions right away? If you have objections, I mean, I assume you can just hang up. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, so we are actually going to just be looking at a mock website. This is a client site, so it will have real data in it, but we have permission to look at it together. So presumably you all will have access in your life to a Google Search Console that you can look at separately to replicate some of these activities or to see information that you need. So obviously this will all just be illustrative. All right, so we're literally just going to look through the user interface. So in Google Search Console, when you log in, you'll have all the properties that you have access to in Google Search Console. You'll pick the property that you want, okay? Google Search Console, unlike Google Analytics, will almost always just have one option. So if you've used both of these Google tools before, you know Google Analytics can be set up to pull data from multiple places. Just so we all understand, Google Search Console is set up by taking code and putting it in the header of a website. From the date that that header is installed in a website, you will begin to see data. You will not see data in Google Search Console that predates the installation of that code, okay? So if you need to see historical data for a site, you can think about using like the Wayback Machine. If you've used that before, you can think about using SEMrush, you can think about other tools. So Google Search Console, you install the header code. From that moment forward, you begin to be able to see all the data on the site. The first piece, which is considered home, is the overview. So the overview is probably not a place that you will look much. You'll probably almost instantly click into performance, but this is just the collected information that you see all over here. We're going to go in order of the user interface. And I wanted to pull this out because a lot of times a client will ask you, hey, how's that blog performing that we wrote? And this is how you can find it. So what you can do in URL inspection is you literally go in, actually, I think I preloaded. Yeah. So you literally go in, you add the URL to inspect it, and then you can check. You can see, okay, how is that URL? First of all, is that URL registering on Google? So as we know, not everything you write and not everything that's on the internet is being registered by Google, right? It's not all being indexed by Google, which we'll talk about when we get to page indexing. But this will basically tell you like yes or no. Like, has it been indexed, right? So if you write a blog for a client and then 2 months later, they're like, why aren't we ranking for X keyword? You can very quickly go here, troubleshoot and say like, did that blog even get indexed? Like, do we even know if Google's paying attention to that blog? This is a very fast way to do it. Okay, so you can click down in and you can see more information, which will just basically tell you what part of like what sitemap is that a part of, and then it'll tell you a little bit about the site itself and the performance. So the page is usable on mobile. So what Google cares most about obviously is mobile first experiences for users. So it's always important to understand the reason it may not be indexed, or it may only be performing on desktop, in which case Google's going to find it problematic. So that's what URL inspection is. You just get really, really high level data points on an actual URL. So this isn't domain level, right? Google Search Console has domain properties in it, but then you can inspect the individual URLs that are inside that domain, which is obviously how Google works. All right, so then you have a couple of other categories on your user interface, which the first of which is search results, which is probably where you guys have spent most of your time, right? So if you've gone in Google Search Console and looked for data relevant to content that you've created for the internet, you're going to find that in performance, right? So Google Search Console measures two things, right? It tells us about the performance of a site and it tells us about search performance. Those are two different things, right? So the performance of the site is something that we just saw in that URL inspection, which includes parameters like mobile usability, site speed, things like that, right? Which is site performance, domain level performance, and search performance. So search engine results page. You want to go to Google if you want to know what keywords in my search, what keywords are ranking in what order, what queries are driving traffic to my site, which pages are ranking for what keywords, right? So it's all those very much like on-page SEO considerations that Google's going to give you data around, Google Search Console. All right. When you open performance, there may be ways to customize this. I don't know if there are or that there are, but basically when you open performance and search results, it's always going to default to 3 months. So anytime you use any kind of data tool, the first thing you want to make sure is that the parameters you're looking at make sense, right? Are those the parameters that you want to be seeing for? Google will close data, I would say, I mean, we can ask Megan V, but like 2 to 3 days after the month closes usually. So for instance, if you're running a report on how a site performed in a 30-day period, you cannot run that report on day 30. You have to run it on like day 2 or 3 of the following month because all the data won't be in. Okay, so you always want to first make sure you're going in and setting your parameters. There are 2 ways to use date ranges in Google Search Console in the SERP section, search engine results page, SERP, right? So the search results section, you can set all these like presets or you can go into custom. I would almost always do custom unless you're looking on the exact day and you know exactly what that range is going to be, right? So I would almost always go in here and do a custom search parameter so that you can know exactly what slice of time you are seeing data for. And then you would just click apply. Before I do that, I just want to show you that another cool data visualization feature of Google Search Console is that you can do comparison metrics. So you can go in and say, so we did this a lot with year-end SEO reporting, right? Where we went in and said, okay, this year for the first 6 months of the year, you had this many keywords, you had this much traffic, whatever. And then we would go in and set a comparison date range for the previous year, right? Because search trends are bigger than 30 days. We know that, right? Something you wrote on day 1 of a month and posted on day 10 of that month is probably not even indexed by day 30 of that month. You have to zoom out and make sure clients understand the bigger rhythms of their search performance month over month, year over year, quarter over quarter, right? And those comparisons are really important, especially for clients who have significant business cycles. So if it's an e-com client and they have a retail cycle, that's going to dramatically impact. So what you don't want to do in that case would be to compare November site traffic against March site traffic. You would want to compare because it won't be apples to apples, right? They're going to sell more in November if it's a retail client than they would in March because November is a huge buying season. So you would want to compare November of this year against November of last year. That's the actual value, right? Or even November, October would be less meaningful than the year over year comparison. So just one of those where you bring your thoughtfulness when you kind of set the parameters of this and consider what does this data need to tell you? What do you need to learn from it? And then how do you kind of set the way that you view the data so that as an analyst, you can go in and make the most out of it and actually find out something meaningful. So we're just going to set it as the 31 October range. And then we'll have all the elements here. I am close to time for this bucket. So what we're going to do is basically just look at this screen for a second together and consider that we have clicks, impressions. Okay, so do you guys need me to define what these are? Okay, I don't think anyone does. So clicks, impressions, how many times it showed up. I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. Shut up, take people's feedback. Okay. So this is it's obviously going to be in a line graph against dates here. It's going to have all of your metrics here. And then you've got your your different panels here. So you have in the search results data, queries, pages, countries, devices, search parents, and date. You're almost never going to look at these because who cares? And you can find better data for that in Google Analytics, right? Which is more of a user behavior platform. So you're really just going to look at probably queries and pages. And I'll just quickly show you that you can. It's going to get hella small. Hold on, my thing is in the way. You can go down here and set more rows. Okay. So you're going to want to see up to 500. All right. So we'll pause there and do a quick little exercise. So because this is like home base for me as an on-page SEO person, if you're looking into technical SEO, you're looking into site performance for core web vitals, like we'll go through all that in a second, but this is honestly where you're probably going to mostly live, right? So you're going to set your date parameters, you're going to set other dimensions if you get more into the data, but we're not going deep into data today. We're just doing high level. Search type, all that kind of stuff. So what I want you to do is look at this page, and then I'm going to pull up a little scavenger hunt, and there might not be enough for each of you to enter something, but feel free to like, see if you can look and find all the things that are here in like the 2 minutes I'm going to give you to do it. So basically what I want you to do is go, and I'll share this in the chat. I want you to go find these elements on the screen and fill in the data. And again, if other people are filling it in, just the goal here is for you to just pay attention to it. Find where it is visually and start to train yourself to be able to quickly find those things that you're going to need. All right, so let me share it in the chat. So you should all have access to that. And I'm going to give you like 2 minutes to go through and try to find the data that matches that parameter on the spreadsheet. It would help if I was sharing my screen. Here's the screen that you will use to find the data. Sorry. I switched to another screen.
My screen is literally frozen.
It is.
I see you guys. Yeah, I just tried to hook up my Mac to my work screen so that I could do all of this on 2 pages. It just blew it to trash.
Good job. I'll give you guys like 1 more minute. Good job. 2 more. Hot tip for the highest impression date. Look at the graph. All right. Good job. All right. So let's go through together and talk to me about where you found the info. So easy, hard. So where's search type? Describe it to me.
The first little blue bubble on the top left.
Good job. Date.
Right beside it.
I'm trying to get the auditory learners involved. Okay. Total clicks.
Right
below
below
that.
search type.
Yep. Total impressions.
Purple.
Average CTR.
To the
Average
right of that.
position.
To
Yep.
the right of that.
Last updated.
Top right.
Mhm. So if you guys missed it, it's right here. Why does it matter? These are all the things you have to be able to find quickly if you're going to be efficient in this tool. And every so often, something will happen with your site where it will become disconnected to Google Search Console. And you can do a whole report and not realize that the information was harvested 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it feels really good when you do that.
Just always check. Like, it's just one of those things. All right, highest click count. Which of these graph lines is click count?
Blue.
Good job.
Impressions was hard because I feel like there could be 2 days.
Mhm. Yeah, you didn't have the scroll advantage
Yeah, I was really
to see the
squinting
actual
on that.
numbers. Yeah. Okay, and then where's top query?
All the words listed towards the bottom there.
Mm-hmm. And then highest impression date. Well, yeah, we just talked about that. Good job. Okay, so this is one of those things where, again, part of my entire goal today is for us to look at it, pay attention to it, all the little pieces that you'll get over time more and more familiar with, and it will just you'll become very fluent in the tool. So any questions about where you see stuff there? We're going to blow through a couple more of the UI factors and then work on exports. Okay, I'll make it a little bigger again. Okay, we will come back to queries and pages when we do our data exports, because that's what we're going to test out. So let's come back to that, and then we'll go through the rest of this. Okay, so the other elements of the UI, good job, by the way, is the Discover page. So this client does not seek to rank on Google Discover page, but this is where, like, map pack or images or things like that, you can set this up to be customized to show you factors that are not just plain SERP. So as you probably know, Google owns the world. So it indexes non-text based content. And there are ways that clients can show up for ranking in non-text based content. You could also show up as new knowledge-based queries, all these kind of things, right? So I won't go deep into that, but that can be set up and configured so that you start to pay attention to things that are not just articles. Page indexing, we're going to come back to in a minute, but this is something that came on with Google Search Console last year, and it's new. And basically it just tracks indexing, which is great. And it gives you all the reasons that something may or may not be indexed, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so indexing, like I just said, might have, non-text based content. Everybody thinks this is going to become a much bigger deal in the future. So as we have a lot of different kinds of content, a lot of multimedia on websites, it's going to become something that SEO people need to pay better attention to, and it's going to impact a site's performance from a domain level. Remember, everything in Google Search Console is speaking to the domain. Sitemaps are obviously very important. You can manually submit a sitemap if you have dev work, all that kind of thing. So this just shows you which sitemaps Google is monitoring or measuring. So especially if you have a client like relaunch a site or host a site differently, or their hosting randomly expires, or they have an expired security certificate, like there are any number of reasons the sitemap could be disrupted. Just pay attention. It's always just something to click through. Removals. So obviously this actually happened to us. So this feels like a nothing burger that nobody ever cares about, but it happened to us with a client where they had one of their competitors basically did like an SEO attack on their website and got them like added all of this weird spammy content and all that. If they have content that, you want removed from Google search, like somebody does something horrific and the client needs it removed immediately, you can do that. Now, will it always be available in the Wayback Machine and things? Yeah, probably, but you can do what you can to get it at least disassociated from the current domain. So that's kind of the indexing. So indexing is just, Google discovers, crawls, indexes. That's how it shows up on the list, right? So that's what the indexing factor is. And then we have page experience. So we talked before about how, it's not just content, it's also the fact that the site needs to perform well. The site needs to have images that are compressed and it needs to be set up. The URL structure needs to be set up correctly. The sitemap has to be clean. There's any number of technical elements that impact how a site performs in search, and Google Search Console monitors some of them, right? It's not going to give you the depth of information that like Screaming Frog or some of the other technical SEO tools will, but it'll at least give you a high level. And so if a client, they haven't updated their website in 5 years and it was developed desktop first, this is usually going to be a bad number that's going to scare them and show them like, this is not a good idea, right? This is, you've got some bugs in the machine that are impacting performance. So this will basically tell you if all your URLs work on those platforms, and then the Core Web Vitals, which is all the different factors. If you have not looked into Core Web Vitals and you work in marketing at all, I strongly recommend that you at least get fluent in what they are, because they will absolutely come up from time to time. And so that's definitely something I would suggest you explore more. And then there's mobile usability. So this will give you reasons. Please keep in mind, in addition to obviously wanting to rank well in search, the usability of a website is absolutely an accessibility issue too. So there are people who use screen readers. There are people who are differently abled, who are using devices to help them navigate a website. If those things are negatively impacted, it's going to negatively impact you in search, and it just is bad because you need to be there for all the people. Okay, security and manual actions. Obviously, that's just going to tell you if there's anything like very problematic on your site, spammy. Keep in mind, Google is not just Google is not a right. Like ranking on Google, you have to play by Google's terms. So Google can absolutely, and has many times and does every single month, disavow URLs and domains and says you will not show up in Google ever. Right. So they're, pay attention, like, clients who want you to game the system or to do a lot of black hat SEO or things that you're not comfortable with, or buy a ton of backlinks, all that. Any spammy behavior can get you put into manual action, which means a human at Google looks at your website. Okay. So anything that it would be tracked here, right? If you have an issue that could be going up for manual review, not a place you want to be, because being stuck in Google jail is deeply problematic. And then any security issues. So like if your security certificate expired or something, it would show up there. Unlikely that you need it, but legacy tools and reports. So if you're used to a very old school way of using Google Search Console and you don't see something that you used to see, you can try to find it there, but you probably won't. And then links. So as you know, not just what's on a website matters to Google, what a website links out to, and what's out there that links back to a website matters to Google, right? So external links and backlinking. So this basically tells us this is how many external links this site has. This is how many internal links it has. These are the top linking texts. If you're involved in on-page SEO, you know that anchor link text is a huge part of your strategy for how you're going to create stickiness within the site and then create, some resonance out against external sites reciprocally. So that just kind of tells you here's the top text that you're linking to. This is also a good way to keep track if you are over optimizing and things like that. So just paying attention to all that. Every so often you'll start getting really like spammy, weird backlinks. You can always just keep track of them in here. Most people use like SEMrush for that, but you can look for it in here too. And then settings. So that is pretty much, I guess settings we should look at really quick. So I'm obviously not a verified owner. This is not my website, but it will tell you kind of the basics here. And then a lot of people are like, how do I tell a client how to add me to their Google Search Console? That's over here in user settings. So settings down here in the UI is just the general settings of the account. And then over here, user settings, they could go in and add you into their account. All right. Any questions about that? Cool. All right, so anybody can log in and look at a Google Search Console. But people who want to use Google Search Console as a tool to support marketing efforts, either in their own company or with a client, need to learn how to get the data from Google Search Console off of Google Search Console and make sense out of it. So there's basically no interactive elements for you to manipulate the data in Google Search Console, to prioritize it, to visualize it differently. Like, it's a very static system. There are things you can do. And we build for our clients like Google Data Studio, which pulls Google Search Console data into a studio where we can do a lot of things with data viz. But if you're just like starting out and you want to use Google Search Console and you want to take the data off of it to make sense of it, there are probably 2 to 3 functionalities that you need to kind of learn. And so we're going to do 2 of them to start together, and then we'll look at page indexing briefly before we close. Any questions? What's the first thing I need to do since coming back to this page? If I want to look.
Set your parameters.
Good. All right, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to set the date range. Note it defaulted back to the 3-month. All right, so I'm going to go back in and apply. All right, and then let's do queries first. So what we'll do is we'll go and set rows per page. So the export will apply to what is visible. So if you have 10 rows visible, that's what you're exporting. If you have 500 rows, so let's just do 500. That's what we'll export, okay? So who sees export?
Top right.
Yep. All right, so you have 3 options.
Sorry, just a quick question.
Sure.
How would you know how many rows to export? Is there any sort of guidance around that?
It depends. So like for this client, once we get down here, we're at 1 click. So am I really concerned about a key phrase that drove 1 click? Probably not. Yeah. So when it comes, Alicia, like real solid, like keyword research or keyword investigation tools, Google Search Console just tells you the story. It doesn't give you any recommendations. It doesn't give you any like, here are the related keywords. When we do SEMrush, I'll show you tools that are better at that. So basically this is just, what's relevant. And as the analyst, you go in and say, I'm not too interested in anything that drove 1 impression, 1 click. All right, so I'll export. Yeah. I'll export onto a Google Sheet because that's my preference. And then this basically comes out and exports everything. So let's just observe it for a minute. All right. So when we exported all of the keyword data, what did we do? It stayed in click order, but that's not necessarily the order I wanted it, right? So one important metric, is what phrases brought clicks to the site. But another important metric that almost any client's going to want to know is what? What are we on page 1 for? Right? What are we in position 1 for? They care about position, right? So where you show up in SERP is deeply meaningful to anybody who's doing SEO strategy. So when you go in and you put data like this, now you can start to play with what you see. Right? So any client's going to want to know what position am I in, right? So the first thing you need to go, obviously, is go freeze. They want to know what position. So then I would go and sort. So then you could say, okay, let's look at the data this way. So what we're actually ranking, not just what's driving clicks for the site, and notice what changed. So what changed dramatically? We were looking at what drove clicks, and this one was like 70 something. Let's look. Okay. And then what changed?
Okay, you've got like very little clicks with really high ranking.
Good. So a client would say, I want to get to number 1 spot. And we'd say, score. You got 1 click because of that number 1 spot. And this is where you start to draw you tell the story of what's actually driving business, right? Not necessarily the things you're ranking number 1 for, because the things you're ranking number 1 for are nothing burgers. Tell me what other data strikes you as super, super interesting about this. I set it up too high. Sorry. What else looks interesting to you on this? This is very weird. So an impression means what? What does an impression mean?
Someone saw your result on
It's
Google.
shown.
It's shown up in the search engine results page one time, and it was clicked on one time.
Apparently pickleball is not that popular in Philadelphia.
But if you just looked at the raw data, you would say pickleball in Philadelphia is the most important thing to people coming to our website. That's what the raw data would have implied. But that's not actually what's true, right? So we may be ranking for a body of pickleball keywords, to be fair. The point is, until we can export and manipulate, we're not actually seeing the full story. So then what other element I would want to look for? Yeah, we want to know what drives clicks. Yeah, we want to know what's in top 1 position, right? We've got a whole bunch of stuff on page 1. This is a brand new site, by the way, that we built for them. We also want to look at CTR, right? So if we're to look at, oh wait, go the other way. So click-through rate. We want to know that URL got served on the search engine results page and somebody clicked on it. It's the highest possible award you can have, right? People think it's being number 1. It's not, it's being clicked, right? You want to be clicked. So if we looked that way, we would say, okay, there are some variations of pickleball keywords that are driving traffic to the site. Not a ton of them, but the ones that are there are getting clicked. So what does that mean? Pickleball isn't driving as much traffic to the site as we think it is, but the people who see pickleball, see us in pickleball search results are clicking. You see how much more complex it is than just looking at this keyword ranks for this, or this URL is driving traffic to our site. Like once you zoom out and you start manipulating the data, you can start thinking more strategically about what you see. Any other observations or ways you want me to move? And this is only moving 4 dimensions, right? So you think you get a heat table going in Google Data Studio, like you can really fly. That's nerdy. All right. Any other ways you want to see this data real quick?
What are their highest, like what query is getting the most amount of clicks?
Yeah, you actually work with this client. So you're like, I care. It's not letting me. Well, I guess we could just go back here. So that is the way it's sorted in Google Search Console. So Pickleball Philadelphia and Pickleball Near Me are driving the most clicks to the site. So being hard on ourselves, we'd say like, was this actually a super successful month? Because this client doesn't sell pickleball services. You might look at it and be like, okay, all of our performance metrics were up, right? We did great. If we do comparison, we're up month over month, we're up year over year, everything's golden. But did we actually, in blogging for this client, drive business? It's an important question, and one you have to like be hard on yourself about because you want to be an ethical human. Okay, any questions about that? And then we'll look at URLs real quick, kind of have a similar conversation about URLs. So one of the ways that you need to start thinking about the data, right, is multidimensional. Because the conversation we just had was that even just based on these 4 dimensions, this is a multifactorial analysis. We're not looking at any one thing and saying this one thing worked, right? We have this blog that makes us $1 million. You can't say that. Like you have to think more deeply about how content works on a website and in search. And that's what pulling this data out helps you start to, again, handle it. That's why so much of this, like, we're just looking at it. We're just going to look at what's here and then use our logical brains and think about what it means. So same export, right? So we just went from here. You'll notice that this exported into a Google Sheet, a multi-tabbed Google Sheet. So this pulled all of the tabs that were here into a Google Sheet. Okay. And we have the same dimensions. So we got to go in and we got to freeze the top row so it doesn't sort for us, but it's going to default into sorting by clicks. And let's pull it out so we can actually see what the URLs are. So just logically, what page should get the most clicks on any website?
The homepage?
Yeah. And so one of the factors, if you do SEO reporting, that you'll probably always tell a client is here were your top 3 pages, right? Here were your top 3 pages 2 months ago. Here were your top 3 pages last month. Here were your top 3 pages this month. And you start to compare what's driving traffic to the site. Because then as a human marketing person, you can look at it and say, are we driving traffic to our highest converting pages? Because the fundamental flaw that most people have in content is that they optimize their homepage for branding. And everything on the homepage is about us, us, us. Look how great we are. Here's what we offer, right? It's not a conversion oriented. And this is where you start to see SEO bleed into CRO, conversion rate optimization. Because if most of your traffic is going to your homepage, yes, that's great. Because if your homepage is optimized for conversion, if it's just optimized for your brand, you might have a conversion problem, because then the logical connection, Tiffany, is that your homepage then should be your highest converting page, because that's where you're driving the most traffic to. If it isn't, we have a business problem with the way we're approaching SEO. Okay. So let's look through what we got here. So highest clicks, probably unsurprising, but there's a reason we did it in this order. Is there anything surprising to you about, based on what we just looked at with queries, about the pages that are driving the most clicks?
Most of them aren't even on the first page of Google. They're like 19, 17 position.
Good. So 19 is, so if we're working in tens, that means high interest. If somebody's clicking beyond page 1, they have a really high interest in finding out whatever it is, right? Or they're good at searching. They understand that the first 10 results are usually garbage, the gaming the system. And so they're trying to find actual information. So that's very good, Lindsay. That's a very good behavioral insight. What else? What else associated with the keywords we just saw is surprising to you?
The top page has pickleball in the keyword.
And these we would expect, right? Because we saw how many keywords, how many pickleball keywords there were. What I wouldn't expect is that we have 2 pages. 2 of the top 3 pages driving clicks to the site have nothing to do with pickleball. So we have a whole bunch, all of our, and so again, this is where you got to pull the data out and move it around, because the story this tells me is that pickleball in Philadelphia is what people care about on our website. But the URLs, 2 of the top URLs driving traffic to our site have nothing to do with pickleball. So that clarifies the story, because this is actually probably one of the most, this is a sports app where you use an app to find people to play sports with. This is actually probably one of the most important product description pages on the website. And the good news is it's driving a lot of traffic to the website. But if all we looked at was queries and we were in the race to number 1, we would have missed a lot of this story, right? About what SEO is actually doing for this website. Okay. All right, let's move it around a little bit. So if we say, these are all the clicks, that's fine. I don't know if I care that much about that. I don't care that much about that. I do care about this, right? I care a lot about what CTR. All right, so a contest, but it only got 1 click. So that would be great if it had gotten more than 1 click. I think they ran the contest on Instagram, to be fair, so I don't think this was relevant for that. The category of pickleball. And then dramatic. So what do we notice here? What's an average CTR? Do we know? Do you guys know? An average CTR for a website. Okay, gosh, this is hyper generalization. For most of the businesses that you guys work in, which is B2B SaaS, sorry, Alicia. Average CTR is going to be between 2 and 3%. So this is actually all really good. All of these are really, really high CTRs, which is great. To have this high of a CTR, to Lindsay's point, on this low of a page is remarkable. Because it means people are going to page 2 to find this information. And by the time they get to page 2, you're competing against real content on page 2. You're competing against people who don't know how to game the system quite as well. And it means that against general interest, meaningful content, they're doing really well. People are choosing to click them 14% of the time, 17% of the time, 19% of the time. It's insane. It's really good. So that's the story you would want to tell a client. If you get in and he says, okay, but why did we only get this many clicks for this URL? I say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like context. You have to put this data in context. You have to know what's normal. What's normal for a page 2 performing post? What's normal CTR? What's an average impression rate? What's good? What's the average ratio between impression rate and clicks, right? Which is your CTR. You need to know and be literate and fluent in all of those, and then be able to move it around to show them what happened in that month. The follow-up for the people on my team will be, you're going to do an SEO report for a client, pull the data and put it in a report. I can send you guys all, even if you aren't on my team, the template we have for that. If you want to just mess around, then you can kind of just look at the data, figure out how we would visualize it for a client, and then the narrative we would add. So this is the key, right? Could a computer do this? Sure. Megan V has programmed tons of Python scripts that could go in and pull this information and put it together in the right way and do a nice data visualization. But what a system can't do is it can't look at this and say, as a human on the search engine results page, this is what this is telling us people are doing. This is how this is telling us people are reacting to our content. Thinking what's going on, and then able to provide thoughtful recommendations to say what you think should happen. Okay, any questions about that?
When you exported the data, it gave, that's this how the spreadsheet was laid out, like with all the queries, pages, countries, etc.
So beautiful,
Or did
right?
you?
No,
What?
this is just the straight up export.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yep. Now, where did this go in my drive? That's a question, right? Probably just went.
Yeah. Joy, I think you froze. I don't know if it's just me.
No, I thought that was me too, but she's
I think it's me as well.
You guys froze too. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
now.
Should I stop my video so it's not tragic? Yeah, so I would probably never show a client this, because this means nothing to people unless they've had a conversation like this where they have some sense of how to make sense of it. You know what I mean? Like this is information overload for people. So what we do is then take it and spoon feed it to them and tell them what it means, which is more helpful. Am I still frozen?
No, you're good now.
No, you're good. Just
Okay.
quickly, Joy, a quick question. Is there anything else that you would look at, like in the other, like further down the page? Like, would you look at, like we've just looked at those top, like the top performing ones, but is there anything like further down that you would look at or pull out and say, oh, that could be something worth noting, or that's sort of part of the whole like report?
Yeah, what I would typically, so I'm usually going to be less interested in tracking URL changes as I am tracking query changes. And honestly, when it comes to tracking movement, Google Search Console is too manual.
Okay.
So you would have to like record you'd have to have this every single month and then look back at it and then compare it. And then, so that's where a tool like SEMrush that aggregates data from multiple sources is really helpful. Cause then like you can set up keyword tracking. So you know, month over month, you lost 7 positions in this, you gained 10 positions in that. Like it shows you that flow, which I think in 2 weeks we'll talk about SEMrush. So yeah, there are better ways and easier ways to set that up. But I will just say, like, I think the manual, even the simplicity of what we've done here tonight, like looking at everything and then forcing yourself to like think about it. It's like, it's just the power of handling something because it makes you pay attention to it. So, you know, a lot of people want to like automate everything about an SEO audit or an SEO report. And I think leaving some manual elements in, especially when you're becoming more fluent in it, is really important. Even like the dumb thing we did where I made you describe where stuff was on the page, but like memorizing where something is on a page makes or breaks your efficiency because you know where to look for it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going into a soapbox. Okay. So, all right. So let's look at page indexing. So, this is the component of Google Search Console that I would say is probably the only way in which I use it for any kind of troubleshooting. We talked as we went through the UI, a couple of components that talk about like security or warnings or things like that. You know, my dev person is always going to be looking at the health of a website every month, right? They're going to be paying attention to how a website's performing, if there's any problems, whatever. But as a content person, I'm interested in, is the content I'm creating actually getting recognized by Google, right? So I'm always concerned about page indexing. So let's just quickly look at that. So there are several reasons a page not be, now this is a very new and very clean site. Okay, don't tell anybody. You want to look at tracks? No, we won't look at tracks, Brianna. Look at Aslan.
No, don't do that.
We'll look at Aslan because Jenna's not here. Okay. So if we look at this, you can see a site that has a few more issues. It's a little bit of an older site, right? There are lots of reasons. You do want to learn what all of these mean. I strongly suggest, like, Google it. It's real easy, right? You just quickly Google it, because pages not indexing is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's the thing on purpose, right? You don't want, you have no index tags. You have like a login page for a membership portal, right? You don't want that to index on Google. You don't want it to show up, you know, it's confusing, whatever. So you would have a no index tag. Not found, soft 404, these are redirect codes, right? Lots of things like that. So that's fine. The two categories I want to talk to you guys about are crawled, or discovered. Where's discovered? Oh, she doesn't have any discovered. Hold on, we'll go back. All right, the two I want to talk about is discovered, currently not indexed, and crawled, currently not indexed, right? So I actually just had Shaley go through and fix a bunch of these on our site because I realized there were a bunch of discovered, currently not indexed. So as we said, the sequence of events in Google, it discovers, crawls, indexes. Discovers mean it's just like where it exists. Crawl means the algorithm has actually swept it. And then indexed, obviously, is when it finally shows up on the search engine results page. If you have say you write a 5,000 word manifest that's like supposed to be the ultimate guide to blah, 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 and it's the core pillar piece in your topic cluster strategy. And you're like, why aren't we ranking for any of these keywords yet? This is the first place to look, right? First of all, make sure it indexed. It might not have, right? So if we click in you'll be able to see all of the URLs that are, and this is the same toggle feature, right? You'll set your rows, however many you want, all the pages that are discovered currently not indexed. Now, a lot of these are fine. We don't need any of these category pages to index, but some of these, right? Why haven't these indexed yet? The fact that they haven't means that 2022 turkey trots in Philadelphia didn't go up. Nobody found it on Google, meaning we didn't rank for it. Nobody saw it, right? Bummer. Now, okay. So you want to pay attention to this, right? So every single month, if you're doing SEO reporting for a client, just go look at it. Just go look and see what's on this list. It is very rarely recommended that you force index because it can be problematic, but talk to your developer about that. Okay. It's very important that you have a protocol in place for how you're going to handle that. Okay. So discovered currently not indexed just means that it has showed, Google knows it exists. It is not yet on the index. Nobody can find it on Google. Okay. Same thing with crawled but not indexed. So crawled but not indexed is actually a little bit more problematic in my opinion, because part of the health of a website is how fast you can post content and that content gets on Google. If that's a 3-month span, as a content creator, you have a problem, right? Because you're not able to justify your existence because nothing you create is being shown on Google. It's also just a problem for the health. There's got to be something wrong with the site. It's not supposed to take that long, right? For it to take 10 days, even 3 weeks, fine. But if it's taking like a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, like you have a problem. So always look, when have pages been crawled, meaning that Google has seen them, not just knows they exist, but Google has gone through and swept them and they're still not on the index, right? And this is where I would pay attention. So far, I don't think any of these matter. But basically it'll tell you the last crawl. So what you can always do is compare the first date. So if it says like, if this said November 21st right here for last crawled, I would immediately know something's wrong with the website, right? Because Google's not crawling it at all. If this date is like seriously in the past, that is a real indicator that there could be something problematic on the website. So this is fine. So we know Google knows the site exists and is paying attention to it and is crawling the site. Okay. You also saw that in sitemaps, right? You have a crawled date. Okay. So last read January 9th. Cool. We're cool. Like Google knows the site exists. It's paying attention to the site. The problem is these pages, right? So then you have to do some of that diagnostic work of like, okay, what is the problem with these pages? Now, that's probably the only one I would be concerned about. That didn't get indexed, but you can basically go through and just check all those. So the first, diagnostic task would be go in and make sure that whatever big piece you wrote was indexed by Google. Pay attention every month. Are we seeing stuff get stuck in Google jail, right? Where it's like months and months and months, and it's all of our blogs are not getting indexed and that kind of thing. This also has an export feature. So you would basically just go in, export it to a Google Sheet, just like we did with the other, and then that's what you would share with a developer. That's just a handy tool because not all of your developers will have access to all of your Google properties. So it can be a handy way to share it with them. And then this will show you every URL. It'll say when it was last crawled, and then they can go in and look in the back end of the website and figure out what's going on. Okay.
Joy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So this is what I'm running into with my blog.
Mm-hmm.
My blog has had pages on there for eons and I'm stuck, crawled, currently not indexed. So is that something like I'm going to be able to figure out, or is that something that's going to require, like, how much Googling am I going to have to do?
I would Slack Shaoli.
Okay.
And ask her, because it's one of those tricky things where that definitely blurs the line between on-page and technical SEO. And it's almost always going to be a code problem.
Okay. Because I have 15 blog posts and 7 of them are not.
It's a stinky feeling.
Yeah. And I just discovered this. So that was even stinkier.
Even stinkier. Yeah.
Don't know what you don't know until you know it.
That's right. There you go. Okay. So we actually did everything I said we were going to do, and we have 3 minutes to spare. So I get that was high level. I get that was probably familiar, but I assure you, taking the time to sit and look at it, to pay attention to all the different elements, to watch what happens when you export the data and start manipulating it, you're building a skill, right? You're building Every time you circle an idea, you're going to get a little deeper and get a little more familiar, and it's become a little more intuitive, to the point where you could literally log in. I mean, I can log into somebody's Google Search Console and be like, these are your 10 problems, like 10 minutes of reviewing it, because it's just very familiar. So I urge you, get into a Google Search Console, click around, look at it, Google stuff that you don't understand. Obviously, all the answers are there. But just do the discipline of like interacting with the tool more. And then I'll send all you guys the template for reporting that we use, and you can just like practice. Like, as an SEO analyst, here are the metrics you would pull. You won't be able to find all of them in Google Search Console because we have multiple platforms, but the ones that are from Google Search Console, you can easily find, and then, you know, throw on a deck and just start to build that understanding of like, what does this mean, right? Because this tells you what is. Your job as a human thinking person is to say, what does it mean? And then what are we going to do about it? Any other questions? I'm going to meaningfully pause in case something occurs to you.
No questions, but I got my mug. Because
Yours looks the most glamorous out of everybody's.
I picked a very glamorous photo, which is not me at all. So that's kind of funny.
Lindsay made me redo hers.
I didn't make you do anything.
I changed my hair color since, so
It looks so good. I love it, Cass. Cass's looks just like her. Faith's looks just like her. Yeah. Lindsay, we got redone. They did hers with like a weird, like tiny neck or something. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, if you think of anything else after this, obviously just let me know. I'll distribute I'll just distribute like one version of our template. So just copy it yourself, please. And then you do whatever you want with it. And then if you have any questions, let me know. And then we're going to do a similar training next week on Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is all about user behavior, how they act on the site, right? Which is a very different way to look at it. And very similarly, there are ways to manipulate the data, interact with the data that really impact what you understand about how a site is actually performing beyond face value, how it's actually performing in the real world. So I look forward to that. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much,
guys.
Joy. Thank you.
It's a weird
See you
combination.
guys next week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.